very much for coming, especially those last week where we had a bit of problem with 2 breakout rooms. You're all very patient with us, so thank you ever so much for that. But I think we've got a more consistent. We've got one Zoom, which makes it a lot easier. So I won't speak for long, because I want to hand you over to Edel, Roddy, just to say this is the 3rd workshop in the series, and it's focused on creating enriched environments of care and learning. So and this one, I'm really pleased to introduce you to Edel, who's coordinated a project called the Connections Project. Oh, can people, just a quick one for those of you who are aren't muted, could you mute? Is that okay? It's just while we're presenting. So Edel's led the Connections Project in the University of West of Scotland, and it's just lovely stuff. It's about having fun and getting to get to know one another in camp. So I'm going to hand those straight over to you, Edel, really, because they don't want to hear me. So over to you.
Thanks so much, Nick. And yeah, absolutely delighted to be here. So I'm joining from Glasgow. So I'm based up in Scotland, and I know we've been talking about the weather, but I'm sitting here in the dining room with a blanket wrapped around my knees. So if I ever end up in a care home, I will be very specific on the blankets I want around my knees. I can't live without them. So yeah, so I'm just going to share my screen, and as Nick introduced, I'm going to be chatting about practical and fun ways to build relationships and mutual understanding in care homes. So I thought we'd actually start with something to help us to connect. Now there's quite a big group of us here, but the presentation that I'm going to be chatting about is about relationships, which by the sounds of it really builds on if some of you were at the 2 previous sessions. So last week, storytelling and creating safety for storytelling with Kat, and before that, Tamsin, who's a colleague and friend of mine, around learning and connection in care homes. So really, I suppose a connection and relationships is a key theme across the 3 workshops. So I would just like to start by sharing a resource that we developed in the project I'm going to be chatting about. And the resource is called Picture Knowing Me. So I just need to come out of this and go into the internet. And basically I'm going to share this resource, and it's one of a number of resources I'll be sharing today, all of which are freely available to you for you to use from this afternoon in your care home. So if you fancy this resource, I'm just going to take us through how to find it. So it's the My Home Life website. We can put the link in the chat box. Go to interactive online activities and scroll down, and we're going to Picture Knowing Me. I'm just going to click on this, and hopefully you're seeing a spinning wheel. And each of the rungs of the spinning wheel is a different prompt. So there's about 20 different prompts. So the idea is that you press the button to spin the wheel, and it's going to land on significant people. So imagine that you're using this as a round with maybe residents in the lounge of your care home. Maybe you're using it with a new resident. Maybe you're having a meeting on Teams, as we can see, or on Zoom. This can work online as well. So significant people is one prompt, and the idea then is that people share whatever they feel comfortable sharing in relation to that prompt. So I'm just going to go again, just so we have a bit of a flavour of the different prompts. Things about me that are maybe a bit different. Okay, and maybe we'll do one more. Habits or routines that are important to me. Okay, so I wonder actually if we might just maybe share a little bit about that in the chat function. So I'm going to go first. I'm going to share out loud, and then maybe others can use the chat function. So if you haven't used the chat function before, if you go to the lower part of your screen, you should see a little speech bubble with name chat under it. If you press on that, it should enable you to type into the chat function. So I'm going to share a habit or routine that's important to me. So it's from lockdown. On Thursday nights, started this Thursday night Zoom call with friends, and it's a group of there's 5 of us, and I think before lockdown we probably would have talked to each other about once every month or 2. and over lockdown, it became this weekly Thursday night routine. So it's actually become something that's actually, I'm not quite sure, we've kept it going. I'm not quite sure we're going to continue it forever, but it certainly has been really important to me during lockdown and even since things have opened up as well. So that's my Thursday night routine. So just for you, anyone else feel like they'd like to share a habit or routine that is important to them? Thanks, Ika. Getting kids to school after I go to work, day off, oh, going to the gym, fabulous. A daily walk, a pint of cold water. My goodness, the healthiness of the people on this call. Cup of coffee, that's more like it, lovely. And tea, swimming with my daughter on a Sunday, gorgeous. Yeah, a daily walk to the gym and having a swim, maybe some wine, lovely balance there. Fabulous. So feel free to keep adding. And as I say, that's just as a way of, even though we're a big crowd, that we still have some sense of connecting with each other as we start our time together today. So if I can just go back and share a little bit about the project that resource was developed in. Sorry, I'm going to say what we're actually going to be talking about today. So that was the Connecting with Picture Knowing Me. I'm going to share a little bit about the Research Connections project and how it links with the census framework, which I hear, thanks to the work of Nick and others, is very well known among this group. And it specifically had the census framework, one specific link with the census framework and the connection project called Knowing Me, Knowing You Fusion. Then we're going to be trying out some of the resources other resources that have been developed in the project that help support building fun and connection in care homes. So that's generally what our plan is for the next 55 minutes or so. So sorry, it's doing something funny there. Okay. So the Connections project. So the Connections project was, as Nick said, based in the University of the West of Scotland, and it was a 3-year research study which was exploring community in care homes. So we worked with 19 care homes in one local authority area here in Scotland. The area is called East Ayrshire. And so we worked with the residents and relatives and staff and wider community members in those care homes to explore what it is that community means to people who live, work and visit care homes. And basically out of that project, we came up with what we called 6 clues and cues to creating community in care homes. And it's this idea that there's so much that already happens in care homes that builds community, and we were just trying to name some of those things, and also maybe help to see, are there others that we might want to work on more or explore more in order to further develop and enhance community in care homes. So the one we're going to focus on today, the clue and cue, is Knowing Me and Knowing You. Just to mention the others, there's learning each person's language, fostering friendship, time makers and investors, wait till I tell you what I learned, and short and sweet moments of connection. So if you are interested in those other 5 clues and cues, there's information about the project and about those clues and cues at the website that's linked below. But as I say, for today, we're going to hone in on the Knowing Me and Knowing You clue and cue. So basically in this project, we used an approach called appreciative inquiry. And appreciative inquiry is interested in what is currently working well, what do people value, what do they care about? Because we may have a tendency to think in order to improve things, we have to go in and find the problem and really get to the root cause of the problem in order to bring about improvement or change. In appreciative inquiry, we flip this, we think about what's working well, what people care about, what they value, and then we look at ways to help those things to happen more of the time. So when we were asking people about this theme of knowing me and knowing you, this idea of everyone knowing each other in care homes, these are some of what people were telling us about what was important to them in relation to this. So I'm just going to read it out, and obviously you can follow it on screen yourself. Oh dear, just need to move. So at the heart of community in care homes are people knowing each other's strengths, hopes and fears and quirks, the things people are fond of and the things people avoid. As people in the care home community get to know each other, there is an awareness that holding on to what is familiar can be very important for some people. There is also room for people to change their mind and discover new hopes and preferences as they get to know more about life in the care home community. As relationships develop, people learn about the range of factors that can influence a person's day. We recognise that it is normal for people to feel a range of different emotions on any given day. And so if someone is feeling sad or disappointed, that this may not necessarily be something we need to fix. And so we try to discover more about what they would like to happen. We do our best in responding to people's wishes and preferences. When it's not possible, we try to have open conversations to discuss why we are not able, at this time, to fulfill their wish or preference. We navigate the compromises that are part of community living as best we can. This might mean finding out more about what is important to someone in relation to their wishes and preferences. And it might mean giving something a go that we hadn't tried before. We recognise that getting to know people can take time. And so we value resources and questions that can help us all to name important gems that people might not otherwise think to mention about themselves or their family member and friend. So in essence, that's what people were telling us about what it's like when people know each other in care homes. And so it's that kind of quite in-depth, nuanced, specific knowledge. And you might notice there that we didn't so much use the terms residents, relatives, or staff. It's this idea of everyone knowing each other, rather than just being defined that it's just about knowing the resident, but actually that residents really, really value when they know about staff. And likewise with relatives, and relatives liking to know about other residents, as well as their own loved one. So this idea of a community knowing each other. So how does this link with the census framework? So I suppose it's thinking about achieving the census framework as outcomes, and the idea that what we heard again and again, particularly from staff in the care homes, was it was the quality of knowing, the quality of the relationship that helped these census to be achieved. And so in the early days, they were so keen that could they quite quickly get to know what was important to residents, get to know what helped them to feel safe, what gave them a sense of belonging, what helped them to have a sense of purpose or achievement in their day. And staff talked about, okay, how can we help those conversations to happen quite quickly so that we have that information and that then we can build from there. And so in the project, one specific element of that was maybe around this idea of the sense of continuity. And obviously for some people, maybe the habits and routines, like we've talked about our habits and routines about the daily walk or going for the swim, that might be what was really important for that person. But this idea of fusion came up in the project, and the F in fusion stands for the familiar. So the importance of really spending time getting to know what are the things that are important to people, but also knowing that we need to go in the search of the new. And going in search of the new might be because for some people, the daily walk or the swim in the Sunday is no longer possible. So what was it about that activity? What was it about it that was really important for that person? And are there any elements of that that can be continued? But also this idea that people just being open, that as we age, we still can have an eagerness to learn, an eagerness to experience new things. So just because we listen to certain music for all of our lives doesn't mean that we're not open to new artists. Just because we had certain routines or certain interests doesn't mean that we aren't also open to trying something different. So the fusion, the N being the new. So within connections, kind of valuing the familiar, But again, it's how do we find out the familiar and then going and search the new, and knowing that it does take bravery, it does take courage, both on the part of staff and residents and relatives, to try something different, not knowing there's no guarantees with this. It is a bit of a risk to try something maybe that hasn't been done before. And so how do we help that to flourish in care homes, that sense of confidence, of ability to give things a go in order to search for the new thing that can help people have a sense of safety, achievement, purpose, belonging, significance. So what really want to focus and spend our time today at is 2 resources that were developed as part of the Connections project. And again, to emphasize, these are freely available for you to pick up after today and to use in your own settings. So the first resource is called Insights into Me. And this is a folder of different questions and prompts that you're going to actually get to play around with in breakout rooms to help people to get to know one another in care homes. So maybe you may have your own documentation for this. You may have some version, maybe all about me. Maybe there's other versions of that you use. So this is not about a new document to replace your existing documentation, but it might be that there's certain questions or prompts in this that you value. So I'm just going to give an example of what I mean. So again, this is available online. Just need to move this. So this is the Insights into Me, and as I said, it's a folder, but it's also an interactive or an editable PDF. So you could send this to relatives and they could complete this before the resident moves to the care home or in the opening days. So sometimes I like to be called Deli. My name is Edel, and I like to be called Deli. Is that coming? I just want to check, are you seeing me type in Deli there? Yeah, perfect. So that's an example of, that's the first page of the clue of this Insights into Me. What you're going to be using is having to go at some of the other ones. There's some pages on words, others might use to describe me. So it's this idea that I know I met a relative and she was asked to describe her mother, and this relative, she was actually 60 herself. So she'd known her mother obviously for 60 years, but yet she felt she did kind of struggle to describe her mother to help others to get to know her mother quite quickly. So that's one of the reasons we came up with this resource, which is about kind of maybe more unusual ways we might use to describe ourselves or others. So again, maybe if a new resident or residents that live there currently, what words and phrases might they use to describe themselves? Or supposing staff would like to introduce themselves to a new resident or a new relative, what kind of words or phrases would you like to use to help others to get to know you? So that's another example. But as I say, in the breakout rooms, you'll have some chances to have a go and have a look at some of the other questions and prompts in the Insights into Me. So that's the first resource. And then the second resource is called A Place in the Fun. So A Place in the Fun was developed as part of a collaboration with an organisation called Hearts and Minds. And Hearts and Minds are a therapeutic clowning organisation. So I don't know if you've ever come across therapeutic clowns in the context of caring for people with dementia. I'm seeing some nods. So you can see the clowns there. So basically the only reference to clowning really is the red nose. They don't wear any big shoes or face paint or anything like that. The women tend to wear very brightly coloured dresses. The men might have braces and they might have their Sunday suit on when they're coming to visit the ladies and the gentlemen in the care home. So as part of the Connections project, 2 elderflowers called Lily and Blossom came and spent a number of weeks with visits with residents in one care home. And what we did was we observed what the elderflowers were doing in their interactions with people with dementia that for me were absolutely astounding. So I'm a nurse by background and I worked in care homes, and I, in all my career, never saw the quality and the immediacy of the connections that the elderflowers were able to generate with people they'd never met before. I was just completely blown away. So we were really curious as what is it that the elderflowers are doing that helps that connection to happen, real, meaningful, authentic connection. So what we did as part of the research project is observe what the elderflowers were doing, and then also have discussions with the elderflowers and care home staff to try and tease out what it was that the elderflowers were doing, and were there elements of that that maybe the care home staff could have a go with. So the resource we developed out of that is called A Place in the Fun. And you're also going to have a chance to have a look at that and see what your perspective on the Place in the Fun is. So Place in the Fun is basically a resource that has 6 ideas for enhancing fun and connection in care homes. So it's ideas around, I suppose, care homes being places and spaces of people coming together, connecting, expressing emotion, using their imagination, trying things out. Not this kind of false happiness or treating people like children, but actually really tapping into people's innate playfulness, innate desire to connect with others. So that's what the Place in the Fun, there's 6 ideas in that, and you'll get to read about some of them in your breakout rooms. So I